The snow had been falling since Thursday. By Saturday morning, Harlow Creek was gone. Not destroyed, not evacuated. Simply erased, swallowed by a white that pressed down on rooftops, sealed every road, and reduced the world to a radius of 50 feet in any direction. The gas station on Route 9 had its open sign flickering behind a wall of drifted white. The diner on Maple closed at noon. The sheriff's department sent out one advisory: stay indoors. Roads impassable until further notice. Most people obeyed. The Harlow Creek Public Library did not close. It had never closed for snow. Not in 1993, when the blizzard took out power for 6 days. Not in 2011, when the roof caved on the east wing and volunteers came with tarps and headlamps. The library stayed open because the woman who ran it believed that a closed library was a contradiction in terms that the whole point of the place was to be there when everything else wasn't. Emily Carter had held the position of head librarian for 7 years. Before that, nothing. No resume. No references beyond a single letter from a retired professor in Vermont whose phone number no longer worked. She had arrived in Harlow Creek on a Tuesday in November, rented the apartment above the hardware store, and walked into the library the following morning to ask about the position that had been vacant for 4 months. The town council, desperate, had hired her by Thursday. She was good at the job. Better than good. She cataloged the entire collection, 14,000 volumes, from memory within her first year, correcting the previous system's errors without being asked. She remembered which patron preferred large print, which child was frightened of the basement, which elderly man came every Wednesday not to read but simply to sit somewhere warm that wasn't his house. She was kind in a way that asked nothing in return. Quiet in a way that felt intentional rather than shy. People in Harlow Creek liked Emily Carter the way they liked the library itself, reliably, without much examination. On this particular Saturday, she was alone. The last patron, old Marcus Webb, 81, who came for the large print westerns, had left at 11 when his son called to say the roads were getting bad. Emily had walked him to the door, handed him his book for the week, watched until his son's truck disappeared into the white. Then she turned back inside and began to work. She was reshelving a cart of returns when the window above the reference desk rattled. Not from wind. She paused. Her hand rested on the spine of a collection of American short stories, Carver, O'Connor, Cheever, and she did not move it. Her eyes shifted to the window without her head moving. The glass was fogged at the edges from the cold, the view beyond it a gray-white wall of falling snow. Nothing. She placed the book on the shelf. Moved to the next one. The thing about silence is that most people don't actually know what it sounds like. They confuse quiet with silence. Quiet has texture, the hum of a heating unit, the creak of old wood settling, the distant muffled sound of a world still in motion. Silence is different. Silence is the removal of something. It has a shape, a weight. Emily Carter knew what silence sounded like. She had spent years learning to hear the difference. The heating unit hummed. The old pipes in the basement ticked against the cold. The wind moved the shutters on the north-facing window in a pattern she had memorized weeks ago. 2 taps, a pause, 3 taps, nothing. 2 taps, pause, nothing. The pattern broke. She set down the book in her hand carefully, without sound, and walked to the circulation desk. Her footsteps made no noise. This was not performance. She wore soft-soled shoes, always, because the old floors were uneven and noise bothered her. She moved between the shelves with the ease of someone who had mapped every inch of this space. From the desk drawer, she took nothing. She simply stood behind it, one hand flat on the wood, and looked at the front doors. They were old doors, heavy oak, original to the building, 1923. They had a specific sound when opened from the outside, a low groan from the bottom hinge, always the bottom, before the latch gave. She heard the groan, then the latch, then boots. 5 pairs. Heavy tread, unevenly spaced, not a group accustomed to moving together. 2 on the right, 2 on the left, 1 hanging back near the entrance. Emily Carter looked at the 5 men who had just walked into her library. She folded her hands on the desk and waited. The one who spoke first was tallest. He wore a dark jacket, the kind with too many pockets, and he moved with the particular confidence of a man who had not been told no in a long time. Late 30s, maybe 40. A scar ran along his jaw, old, faded, the kind that had been there long enough to become part of a face rather than a disruption of it. His name, she would learn later, was Victor Crane. But names were not what mattered in that moment. What mattered was the weapon in his hand and the 4 others positioned around the room. 1 by the door, young, nervous, shifting his weight. 1 near the children's section, stocky, steady, professional. 1 moving toward the back stairs, cautious, experienced. one beside the periodical shelf to her left, watching her specifically, not the room. Emily noted each of them in the time it took Victor Crane to cross the distance between the door and the circulation desk. He stopped 3 feet away, looked at her like she was furniture. "You're alone," he said. It wasn't a question. "Yes," she said. "Anyone expected in the next few hours?" "The library closes at 5. It's just past noon." She paused. "The roads are bad. No one will come." He studied her face. She kept it still, not rigid, not blank, but the particular expression of a woman who was mildly confused and quietly frightened, which was what he expected to see and therefore what she showed him. "We're looking for something," he said. "A storage unit. Metal, about this big." He held up his hands, roughly the size of a hardcover novel. Black casing. "Might have been brought here for safekeeping." "I don't know what that is." "Someone left it here. 3 weeks ago. A man named Doyle." The name Doyle produced nothing on her face. "We have a lot of donations," she said carefully. "People leave things. Books, mostly. Sometimes other things. I keep them in the back room until I can assess them." Crane looked at the man by the periodical shelf. That man, mid-40s, the one who had been watching her, gave a slight nod. "Show me the back room," Crane said. "Of course." She came around the desk. "This way." She led them through the stacks toward the rear of the building. The back room was exactly what she'd described. Shelves of donated items waiting to be cataloged, stacked boxes, 3 folding tables covered with sorted paperwork. A single high window frosted over, one exit the door she'd come through. Crane swept the room with his eyes, turned to the stocky man. "Hartwell, check the shelves." The stocky man, Hartwell, began moving through the room systematically, pulling boxes, lifting tarps, working with the efficiency of someone who had done this before. Emily stood near the door. "Not in front of it, near it. There is a difference." "It's your last chance," Crane said, turning to face her. His voice dropped, not a whisper, but a register that carried weight. The register men used when they wanted you to understand that the next thing they said was not a suggestion. "If you know where it is, tell me now. Things stay simple. You stay fine. We leave." She looked at him. Something crossed her face, something small and quick, gone before it could be named. Not fear, not defiance, something quieter than either. "I told you I don't know what you're looking for," she said. He believed her. That was his first mistake. They searched for 40 minutes. Emily sat in a chair in the main hall. The young one she had privately named him Nervous, because the name fit, standing 3 feet behind her with a weapon she could not see but could feel the orientation of from the direction he kept adjusting his weight. Crane moved through the library with controlled impatience. The man who had gone upstairs, lean, 40s. She had clocked him as the most experienced of the 4, came down twice to report nothing. Hartwell covered the main floor. The 4th man, one she hadn't heard speak yet, broad-shouldered and quiet, worked the basement. She sat with her hands folded in her lap and she measured. Not consciously. The way breathing is not conscious. The way a carpenter's eye for level becomes reflex after enough years. She measured the way she had been trained, half a lifetime ago, to measure everything. Distance from her chair to the nearest shelf. 11 feet. Distance from the shelf to the window on the north wall. 8 feet. 4 inches. The window latch, single lever, opens inward. Frozen, most likely, given the cold. The gap between the periodical shelf and the wall. Approximately 22 inches enough. The overhead lighting. 4 fixtures, 2 of which she knew from experience flickered when the heating unit cycled hard. The unit had been cycling hard all morning. Nervous behind her, right-handed. Weight on his right foot. Weapon in his right hand, low, not raised. Overconfident in his proximity. She did not plan. She did not need to plan. She simply gathered information the way water gathers in a basin, and she waited to see which way it would pour. Crane came back into the main hall. "It's not here," said the lean man coming down the stairs behind him. "I didn't say it was here," Crane said. "I said it was brought here." He looked at Emily. "Who else has access to this building?" "Just me," she said. "The previous head librarian retired 2 years ago. She lives in Florida now." "Who's on the board?" "The town council. 6 members. None of them have keys." He processed this. His jaw tightened. "Doyle came here," he said. It was not quite to her. It was the kind of statement a man makes when he's working through a problem and has forgotten the room. "He came here specifically." "A lot of people come here," she said. "He came here, not the post office, not the gas station. Here." He focused on her again. "Why would a man come to a library?" "Because he wanted a book," she said. "Or because he wanted quiet." The corner of Crane's mouth moved. Not a smile. an acknowledgement that she was not entirely stupid, which in his framework was a kind of compliment. Or because he trusted the librarian, he said. She looked at him steadily. I don't know anyone named Doyle. He turned to the lean man. Garrett. The desk. Garrett moved toward the circulation desk. Emily watched him begin to work through the drawers methodically, not roughly. He had done this before, too. She turned her eyes forward and let them rest on the middle distance, on a point between two shelves where the light came through at a low angle and caught the dust floating in the air. She watched the dust move, measured the current. The air was coming from the north vent, which meant the heating unit had just cycled. 2 of the 4 overhead lights flickered, went steady again. She noted this. She noted everything. The light in the children's section was softer. Someone, years before Emily's tenure, had strung small bulbs along the top of the bookcase, the warm amber kind, not fluorescent, and they gave the corner a particular quality, a contained warmth, that separated it from the rest of the building. Hartwell had positioned himself there after finishing his sweep of the main floor. He leaned against the shelf with his arms crossed, watching Emily across the distance of the room. He was the one she was most careful about, not because he was the most dangerous. Garrett had more experience, and Crane had the particular danger of a man with something to prove. But Hartwell was watching her in a way the others weren't. Not with suspicion, with attention, the way a card player watches another player's hands. She coughed, shifted in her chair. Could I get some water? She asked. Nervous behind her, startled slightly. She felt his weight shift. Crane, across the room. Stay where you are. I understand, she said. Then, quieter, almost to herself. The furnace runs dry in winter. The air gets very low humidity. It's hard on the books. She said it like a woman talking to fill silence. Like a woman whose mind was occupied with ordinary things because ordinary things were safer. Hartwell continued watching her. She turned her head slightly, not toward him, but in that direction, and let her eyes settle somewhere near the window. Her profile was toward him now. She kept her expression soft, distracted. There is a technique for appearing harmless. It is not performance. Performance is detectable. It is orientation, the alignment of the self toward smallness, toward the periphery, toward the posture of someone whose instinct is to move away from danger rather than toward it. Emily had learned the technique the way she had learned everything she knew. Through repetition, under pressure, until the technique became the person rather than a thing the person did. She was very good at appearing harmless. Crane came to stand in front of her again. I'm going to ask you once more, he said. His voice had changed, the surface civility worn through, something harder visible underneath. Doyle, what did he bring you? I don't know anyone. He was here 3 weeks ago. We have him on traffic cams 6 miles from this building. There is no reason for a man like Doyle to be 6 miles from a library in the middle of nowhere unless he came to this library. He leaned down, not close, but enough to require her to look up at him. What did he bring you? She looked up at him, and for one fraction of a second, so brief it could have been imagined, something shifted in her eyes. Not fear, not anger, something cold and geometrically precise, like a measurement. Then it was gone. I'm sorry, she said. I truly don't know. Crane straightened, turned away. That was the moment she began. Not visibly, not yet, but something that had been still in her became oriented, like a compass finding north, and from that moment forward every second was a calculation moving toward a specific end. She let her eyes drift to the lights, then to Nervous behind her, then to Hartwell across the room, then to the distance between herself and the shelf to her left. She folded her hands in her lap, pressed her feet flat to the floor, and she waited for the lights to flicker again. The heating unit was old. Emily knew its rhythms the way she knew every rhythm in the building. It ran hard for 20 minutes, then coasted. When it ran hard, the draw on the electrical system caused the 2 weakest overhead fixtures, the one above the reference desk and the one near the back stairs, to stutter. They stuttered at 1:47 p.m. In the 0.8 seconds of partial darkness, 2 things happened. Nervous shifted his weight to his left foot. Emily moved. Not toward him. Away left, 3 steps, into the gap between the periodicals shelf and the wall, exactly 22 inches wide. Exactly enough. The movement was not fast in the way that film makes speed look, no blur, no sound effect. It was simply a transfer of weight, a controlled fall, a body that knew precisely where it was going and committed fully to getting there. The lights steadied. The chair where Emily had been sitting was empty. Nervous said, "Hey," not a shout. A startled sound, the kind made before the brain has finished processing what the eyes have reported. He turned. The chair. Empty. She's gone. Crane wheeled. Garrett came off the stairs. Hartwell pushed off the bookcase. The room filled with voices, controlled voices, professional voices, but voices carrying the first edge of something that wasn't quite alarm yet. Check the perimeter. She didn't go past me. Basement door? From the periodicals gap, Emily watched the geometry shift. Crane moved toward the circulation desk controlling the center as she'd expected. Garrett took the stairs again. The broad-shouldered, quiet one she had not named him yet came up from the basement. Nervous turned in a slow circle, weapon raised now, looking at shelves. Hartwell did not move. He stood in the children's section and he turned his head slowly, scanning not by looking but by listening. She had noted this about him earlier. He was the one who heard things. She did not breathe. Hartwell's head stopped moving. He was facing the wrong direction toward the north window, not toward the periodicals, but he had gone still, in a way that meant he had heard something or felt something or registered some disturbance that wasn't quite in the range of conscious processing. She needed him to look away. She reached into her cardigan pocket slowly, one finger at a time, and found what she'd placed there that morning, as she did every morning. A small metal clip from the circulation desk. She had developed the habit years ago. In another life, the habit had a different name and a different purpose. In this life, it was simply something her hands did when she was thinking. She placed the clip against the shelf edge and let it fall. The sound it made, small, metallic, directional, came from somewhere to Hartwell's left, toward the reference desk. His head turned. She moved. The broad-shouldered one, she named him Steady now, because his breathing was even and his hands didn't shake, was coming around the end of the fiction shelves toward the periodicals. She was already out of the gap and moving in the opposite direction before he reached it. The library had 7 rows of shelves running north-south, and she had grown up in these shelves. No, not grown up. That was not right. She had grown into them, which was different, a thing that happens in the middle of a life rather than the beginning. She moved along row 4, heading north. A sound behind her Steady's boots on the old floor, tracking the wrong direction. Garrett's voice from the stairs. She's not up here. Crane. She's in the stacks. Spread out. Keep visual contact with each other. He was good. The order was correct. The mistake his team would make was not maintaining that contact. She moved to row 7, the northernmost, the one that ran closest to the exterior wall. The cold came through there in winter, a seeping cold that she had learned to dress for. She pressed her back against the wall and looked down the length of the row. From here she could see 3 of the 5. Crane near the center. Nervous. Moving erratically. Hartwell still. She could not see Garrett or Steady. She found Steady by sound, his boots, moving south, away from her. Garrett she could not locate, which meant he was being careful. She filed this. Garrett was the variable she had to account for. Crane called out, "Carter, I'm going to start destroying things you care about. The books first, then whatever else I find." He paused. "You've got 60 seconds to show yourself." She did not move. 55. Nervous said quietly to Hartwell, "You think she actually went for the door?" Hartwell said nothing. 45. Emily's eyes moved to the junction of the ceiling and the north wall, where a pipe ran laterally original to the building, 1-inch galvanized steel, running from the furnace room to the east wing radiators. She had noticed last October that one bracket had worked loose. The pipe had developed a faint vibration when the heat ran. The heat was running. She reached up. Her fingers found the pipe in the dark above the shelf. She let it rest in her palm for 3 seconds, feeling the vibration. Then she pushed, not hard, a lateral press. The direction of maximum leverage and the loose bracket gave a sound like a small pop, and the pipe groaned and settled. The sound came from the east end of the building. Crane, east side. Go. Footsteps multiple converging east. She went west. The first one went down at 1:53 p.m. His name was not Nervous anymore. In the moment it happened, she did not use the name at all. He was simply a variable that had moved into the wrong position. Alone, at the west end of the periodicals section, facing the wrong direction, with his weight on his front foot and his attention on the east end of the building where everyone else had gone. She came through the gap in the shelves, the same gap she had used initially, the 22 inches she had measured, and she was close to him before he registered anything. The technique she used was not theatrical. It was not violent in the way that word usually implies. It was a specific application of pressure to a specific point, sustained for a specific duration, and it was over in 4 seconds. He slid down the shelf. She set him against it gently, the way you might set down something fragile. He was breathing. He would be breathing when the police arrived. She took his weapon, cleared it, set it on the top shelf behind a row of National Geographic journals from 1987, where it would be useless to anyone in the immediate situation and recoverable later. Then she moved. From the east end of the library, sounds of the search boot steps, the shift of shelves being checked, Crane's controlled voice redirecting. She counted the sounds. 4 distinct patterns of movement, no longer 5. She went south, along the wall. The library had one blind spot. She had identified it within her first week of work, the junction of the E-stacks and the reference area, where a freestanding shelving unit created a pocket of shadow that the overhead lights didn't reach. In winter, with the north-facing windows frosted, the natural light that occasionally compensated was absent. She had thought about this blind spot the way she thought about many things, without urgency, without intention, as a simple fact about the space she inhabited. She settled into it. From here she could hear Crane clearly. Hartwell. Here. Garrett. A pause. Then, here, east stairs. Where's Ramirez? Ramirez. That was steady. She filed it. Last I had him was west side, Garrett said. West side. Crane's voice changed slightly. Reeve. Reeve, that was nervous. A longer pause. Reeve. Nothing. A silence that meant something to all of them. She heard it land, heard the shift in the quality of the air. Crane said very quietly, "She's still in the building." Hartwell's voice, for the first time low even, measuring the words before he released them. She was never running. Another silence. Ramirez said, "What?" She was never trying to get out, Hartwell said. She moved to get room. There's a difference. No one responded for 3 seconds. Then Crane said something she had not expected. He said, "Tighten up. Back to back. Don't separate." He was adapting. This was the other thing she had noted about him. He was wrong about many things, but he was not stupid, and he was capable of updating. She heard the footsteps converge. 4 sets, close together now, moving toward the center of the building. This changed her calculus. 4 together was harder than 4 spread out. She had been counting on the natural tendency to spread to cover more ground, to reassert control through territory. Crane had denied her that. She sat with the change for a moment. Then she looked up at the ceiling. The library had a mezzanine, a narrow upper level, accessible by the stairs at the east end, running above the north half of the building. It had been closed to the public for years. The railing was not up to code, and there was no budget to fix it. She used it for storage. She knew every board up there, knew which ones creaked and which ones held. She went up the back way, a ladder in the storage room that accessed the mezzanine from the west, a ladder that existed in no building diagram and that she had discovered by moving a shelf during her second month on the job. The original librarian had used it for the same reason librarians always found back ways into high places. The top shelves needed attention, and ladders took time. She came up onto the mezzanine without sound. Below her, 4 men, moving as a unit through the center of the building. She could see all of them now. Garrett was the first to feel it. He stopped walking and looked up. It was not that he heard anything. There was nothing to hear. It was a pressure, the feeling of being watched from above, a very old animal response, almost vestigial in most people. In people who had spent time in certain professions, it remained functional. He said, "Up." All 4 heads turned upward, toward the mezzanine, toward the dim, unlit space above the shelves. Nothing moved. "There's a mezzanine," Crane said. "She's up there." He was right. He was also looking at the wrong section of it. Emily moved along the mezzanine boards slowly, the boards she knew, the path she had walked 100 times, and came to the point directly above the staircase at the east end, the only way down in a hurry. She already had the information she needed about Garrett, where he stood relative to that staircase, how he was oriented, whether his weapon was raised. Raised, right hand, pointing at the section of mezzanine to the west. She came down the stairs. He heard her on the 3rd step. Turned. She was already close enough that the angle made his weapon a liability rather than an asset you cannot shoot. What is that close to you without consequences for your own body? A fact that his training had taught him and that his training now retaught him in a fraction of a second. What happened next was brief. Mechanical. The application of a specific set of learned responses to a specific geometry. Garrett went down. Also breathing. Also recoverable. She took his weapon. Cleared it. The nearest surface available was the top of the stair railing. She set it there with a gentleness that she would not have been able to explain if asked. She came around the bottom of the stairs into the sight lines of 3 remaining men. Crane, Hartwell, Ramirez. They saw her. For a moment, a genuine moment, not a dramatic one, nobody moved. She was not what they had expected to see. She was a librarian in a gray cardigan, with her hair still up, standing at the bottom of a staircase in a snowbound library, her hands at her sides. She looked like a woman who had been waiting to be found. Then Ramirez said, in a low voice, that she might not have been meant to hear. "Garrett, just—" "I know," Crane said. And Hartwell said, "Wait." Everyone looked at Hartwell. He was staring at Emily Carter with an expression that was not fear, not yet, but was the immediate predecessor to it. The recognition that something in the model was wrong, that the assumptions needed to be discarded and rebuilt from scratch, and that the time available for rebuilding was very short. "I've seen that," Hartwell said. He was not speaking to Crane or Ramirez. He was speaking to himself, or possibly to the air. The way she came down the stairs. The hands. He paused. "The hands are wrong," Hartwell. Crane began. "She's not scared." Hartwell's voice was very flat now. "She hasn't been scared since we walked in. I thought it was shock." "It's not shock." He took one step back, almost involuntarily. "There's a name. I heard it in." He stopped, shook his head. "They called whoever it was Ghost. Ghost something. Ghost Sniper." The word landed in the room, because no one ever saw the source. You'd hear about positions, people down. No shot heard. The snow fell outside. The heating unit hummed. Crane said, "That's—" "Reeve is down," Hartwell said. "Garrett is down. She's been in this building with us for an hour, and neither of them had any warning." He looked at Emily directly. "That's not luck. That's a skill set." He paused. "Who are you?" Emily looked at him. When she spoke, her voice was exactly the same as it had been when she'd told Crane she didn't know anyone named Doyle. The same register, the same pace. Only the words were different. "I'm the librarian," she said. Ramirez took 3 steps back and hit the shelf behind him. Ramirez broke at 2:11 p.m. He went for the front door, not a calculated retreat, a flight response, the body overriding the professional and running on something older and faster. He made it 12 feet before she was beside him. And then the thing that had happened to Garrett and to Nervous happened to Ramirez, and then there were 2. Crane and Hartwell. They had done the smart thing. Put their backs against the south wall, one on each side of the emergency exit, so that nothing could come from behind them, and so they could see the full width of the room. Emily stood in the center of the main hall. She had not picked up any of the weapons. They were still on their various shelves and railings and surfaces where she had left them, cleared, useless, distributed around the building like punctuation marks. "Tell me one thing," Crane said. His voice had changed completely. The surface civility was gone, and so was the aggression that had been under it, and what was left was something stripped down and functional, the voice of a man who had been wrong about something important and was trying to gather enough information to survive. "The hard drive. Doyle. You know where it is." "Yes," she said. This surprised him. She could see it. "So all of this, you were always going to do what you were going to do," she said. "Telling you earlier wouldn't have changed what came after." She paused. "People like you don't leave librarians who've seen your faces." "A silence," Hartwell said quietly. "She's right." Crane looked at him. Something passed between them, the communication of 2 men who had worked together long enough to speak without language. Then Crane looked back at Emily. "What do you want?" he said. It was a different kind of question than the ones that had come before. The earlier questions had been demands in the form of questions. This one was an actual question. "What are the terms? What is the negotiation? What does this end with?" "The drive goes to the right people," she said. "Not your people." "And us?" "You leave this building. You don't come back to Harlow Creek." She held his gaze. "Ever." Hartwell said. "She means it." "I know she means it," Crane said. Another silence. Longer. "How do I know you'll hold to it?" Crane said. "Because I've been invisible in this town for 7 years," she said. "And I'd like to remain invisible. I don't need your names in a file any more than you need mine." She paused. "We both disappear. That's the offer." Crane was quiet for a long time. Long enough that Hartwell shifted his weight. Then Crane said, "The others. They'll have headaches," she said. "Nothing permanent." He looked at the room, the empty room, the 4 men down, the weapons distributed around the shelves. He looked at this woman in a gray cardigan standing in the middle of his disaster, and he did the arithmetic that she had already done, 10 minutes ago, which was that there was no version of this where he came out ahead, and the best available outcome was the one being offered. "All right," he said. "There's one condition," she added. He waited. "The boy by the door, Reeve, though she didn't use the name. He's young. This is new for him, I could tell." She paused. "Make sure he gets out of this work before it's too late." Crane looked at her for a moment that she did not attempt to read. "You're a strange person to be hiding in a library," he said. "Everyone hides somewhere," she said. She gave them 20 minutes to collect their men and leave. She stood by the circulation desk and she did not watch them go, not because she trusted them, but because watching was unnecessary. She could track all of them by sound. The dragging boots of men being half carried, the low voices, the groan of the front door on its bottom hinge, the soft compression of footsteps hitting the snow outside. Then nothing. The heating unit hummed. The pipes ticked. She stood for one more minute in the empty library. Then she went to the storage room at the back, moved a specific box from the second shelf, and removed from behind it a small metal case, black, approximately the size of a hardcover novel. She set it on the folding table and looked at it for a moment. Then she took out her phone, an old one, nothing smart about it, and dialed a number she had memorized a long time ago and never entered into any directory. It rang twice. A voice answered. She recognized it. She had not heard it in 4 years. "It's Carter," she said. A pause. Then, "We've been looking for that." "I know. Doyle brought it to me. He said you'd come eventually. Are you all right?" She considered the question. "I'm fine," she said. "There were some visitors. They've left." Another pause. Longer. "Do we need to send someone?" "No," she said. "Send the right channel. Someone local. I'll leave it at the drop point." She paused. Same one as before. "That drop was 7 years ago. Still works," she said. She ended the call. Set the phone down. Looked at the metal case for another moment. Doyle had been right to trust her. She would have to think about what that meant, whether it meant this chapter of her invisible life was ending, whether the equilibrium she had built here was now, finally, too disrupted to hold. She would think about it later. For now, there were things to put back in order. She went out into the main hall and began to assess the damage. Minimal. The shelves were undisturbed. Hartwell had been careful, whatever else he was. One chair had been knocked over. The drawer of the circulation desk had been gone through, but its contents were intact. Nothing broken. She righted the chair. She straightened the drawer. She walked to row 4 of the stacks and collected the National Geographic journals she had set the weapon behind. She slid them back into their proper place on the shelf. 1,987, 1,988, 1,989, in order. At 3:30 p.m. the front door opened. She was behind the circulation desk. She looked up. A woman in her 50s, snow-dusted, slightly breathless Marian Aldis, who volunteered on Saturdays when the weather permitted and had apparently decided that this weather, while bad, still permitted. She unwound her scarf, stamped the snow from her boots on the mat, and looked around the library with the mild satisfaction of someone arriving somewhere warm. "I wasn't sure you'd even be open," Marian said. "We're open," Emily said. Marian hung up her coat. "Quiet day?" Emily looked around the library. The books in their proper places. The chairs at their proper angles. The lights steady overhead. "Very," she said. At 4:55 p.m., 5 minutes before closing, a child came in. His name was Oliver, and he was 8 years old. And he came every Saturday because his mother worked the afternoon shift at the hospital, and the library was the closest warm place with people in it. Emily knew him. He read adventure stories and had a specific fondness for anything involving the sea. She had been saving him a book about deep-sea exploration that had come in with the last donation box. She retrieved it from behind the desk and set it in front of him. He looked at it with the concentrated evaluation of a serious reader assessing a potential commitment. "It's about the Marianas Trench," she said. "Is it actually good?" "It's excellent." He picked it up, turned it over. "Read the back." Outside, the snow was falling in the way. It falls late in the day, not the thick urgency of the afternoon, but something quieter, more final. The snow that falls when the sky has made up its mind. The street beyond the library windows was empty. The footprints that had come in earlier were buried. Oliver looked up from the book. "Were you scared today?" he asked. She looked at him. The question was not, she realized, about anything he knew. It was the question children ask of adults who seem steady, a genuine inquiry into whether steadiness is something real or something performed, because children are not yet certain which kind of world they live in. She smiled. It was a small smile, but it was real. "No," she said. "The snow takes care of everything." He thought about this with the seriousness it deserved. "Because it covers stuff up? Because it makes everything quiet," she said. "And when everything is quiet, you can think clearly." He considered this, accepted it, tentatively, in the way children accept explanations that are not complete answers but feel honest. "Can I check this out?" "That's what it's here for." She stamped the card, wrote the due date, slid the book across the counter. At 5 o'clock she locked the front door, turned off the overhead lights. In the dimness of the reference lamp, she moved through the building one last time, the ritual she performed every closing, checking each aisle, each corner, each window latch, everything in its proper place. She put on her coat, her scarf, her gloves. She picked up the metal case from the storage room and placed it in her bag. She turned off the last light. The library held the darkness the way it held everything completely, without drama, as a simple fact of what it was. She stepped out the front door into the snow. It was still falling. The wind had dropped to almost nothing. The town around her was silent in the total way it gets in deep winter, not quiet, but silent. The silence that has actual substance, actual weight. Her footprints pressed into the fresh surface and she watched them as she walked. Each one perfect, each one temporary. By morning, the snow would have covered them. By morning, there would be no trace of a woman who had walked this street, who had worked in this building, who had for a few hours on a Saturday in January been something other than the person this town knew. She walked. Her footprints disappeared behind her, one by one, swallowed by the falling white. At the corner of Main and Birch she paused, looked back at the library. Dark windows, old stone, the bronze letters above the door, Harlow Creek Public Library Est. 1923. The building stood in the snow the way it always stood, simply, stubbornly, the way things stand when they have been standing for a long time and have no particular intention of stopping. She looked at it for a moment. Then she turned, walked on. The snow fell, and the street was empty, and the night was silent, and there was no one to see her go. Some ghosts choose their haunting grounds carefully. A battlefield holds too much. A city holds too many eyes. But a library holds everything. Every name, every story, every silence between the words. A library is the perfect place to disappear, and the perfect place to remain, for as long as remaining is still possible, before the snow covers everything and the ghost moves on.